Gravity convergence settings of travel, highest centers I, operation settings, sequence, and ground centers and calculations. We're in a space line. Higher lines of set location lines and settings, and converting with position of two satellites and convergence, and one set position, one flight, one manifold, one position, one Wi-Fi. The convergence lines of settings, you understand how it works with the modification of space modulation lines, more imagination. So it's a recourse in set lines of travel. The process how we use our mind telepathies. Now, it's knowing your mind telepathy is what you are, is the symbiote is what you always are, and what the body always is. Body has to understand its direction more than ever because the symbiote is now coming into instructions. So it correlates communications into magnetic force, magnetic pull, comes in electrical lines, communicates to its high centers, travels position point graphs, says communication with settings. Again, the symbiotes ready for their mapping system. So they start identifying everything around their setting, which is nothing converged of its story itself. Now it goes through its own story, it starts to identify its own operation. There's no symbiote, there's no space, no time, no provision, no cycles, no traction, no communication lines, anything in information setting to how it sees itself. It's just itself, which is just you. Just you, the operation, all right? Just you. Okay, you. How you see yourself to yourself, right? The unification lines, high center positions, the operation of your unity system, okay? Starting off that line center locations, there's nothing space and time. Now, the one thing you have to process is just the void itself. What is the void? What is it in rise positions? Because the symbiote already understands what that is. Because the symbiote is already set in sequence. Now the body just has to adjust its imagination. Now processing that, there's no more thoughts, no more actions, and no more emotions. Okay? Thoughts are taken over lines of symbiote, actions are taken over line of provision, and the connection to emotional lines change all communications and settings. So how the symbiote sees things, sees it in a light metaphor. It has its motion, your body has emotion. So there's two convergence setting and projections you have to identify. Process that is travels, understanding that to its awakening, to its awareness, and to its existing information system. Okay, so this helps you to really identify how to see the symbiote of no memory, processing of data, which is the empty storage. That's where the computer is. A computer runs programs, but it can't be running a program in a storyline because it's already existing of no story itself. So as you are in processing, a computer just runs programs, but doesn't run anything that's in burnt disk. It doesn't run anything that's offsetting. It doesn't run anything that's in confusion. It doesn't run anything in location of error, 404. It doesn't run its confusion, okay? It runs its operation, but you're in control of that. You are the narrator, you are the animator, you are the animation. So it makes it easy to process that as the body just starts to see no more vision and travel. No more vision, no correlation, no track centers. All you're going to see is the symbiote itself through instruction. Okay? Now, the 3 months puts all position locations. And remember, this is already done. Okay? Symbiote knows that lines is existing to the networks of operation of direction. Backwards, forwards doesn't matter. Okay? This is symbiote time now. Now, what the body has to register is the running path, is knowing the path, walking the path, walking, running, knowing. Okay? Now, in that position, what's missing in that equation? What's missing in that equation? Okay? The O. Work. Okay? Readjusting centers equals lines equations, operation lines of bandwidth over lines into its knowledge, locates setting kilomite, processing case lines of flux, tango tango foxtrot. Proper perception, line community unification setting grounds. Remograph, course centers, echo chamber flights, directing course setting position lines. This is Alpha Bravo, logging into space of communication setting calculation. Okay? Now, work is a training exercise. It's in practice mode that the body has to adjust its set position, know exactly what it is in lines of its own pod, its own correlations. Time frame times calculation times screen. Okay? Let's modify the line signals. Process of indications, all through travel. Okay, and that formation lines of grounds. Okay, platitude locations. As things get a lot more connected inside the body, as the body starts to adjust, starts to accept, starts to move on. And then the symbiote is just basically given instructions. So let's just give an example, all right? Lines and locations. Process of indication lines and heights and locations, right? 7 a.m. Okay, you're getting up. So I'm just getting you guys what you're going to go through the symbiote. 7 a.m. Okay. All right, this is your symbiote line ground centers. It's 7 a.m. Time to get up. Your convergence state is already set in sequence. It's in lines of hours and seconds, hours and minutes, hours and frames. Would you like to know anything else? So it just gets you an introduction. Process lines and waving panels. That's process lines of 3 indicates the time centers, 1, 2, and 3. All right, that's 3 centers. So that converts to body getting up, body getting ready, and the body going in set lines of sequence. Okay? So this helps you identify the 7 a.m. process lines, direct case lines, getting ready and set lines of sequence, travels point lines of graph, getting dressed, doing this, doing that, going here, going there. All right, so I don't want to go too far. 3 centers is set position of its operation. Okay, bedding lines, ground centers in flux, process lines of 4 centers of calculation screen locations. How it indicates all calculated modified. All right, so as it comes in that line connection setting, okay, in that process, so it's got like an interesting set lines position where the body just has to understand the transition of flow as the symbiote knows the answers. So it's much easier that you're not going to see the vision. The actual vision is the symbiote talking to you through its own system, of its own operation inside of you. The inside of you is the data operating. Okay, now the core rotation is the process of the symbiote can be latched to your biometric system. Comes in your biokinesis, process line direct centers, biograph, communication lines, atmospheres. It connects to everything that makes it set in a balance, right? So the vision of cortex and your theta, you don't have to worry about. It's all done through the symbiote through instruction. The body just has to follow. Whatever the mind does, the body follows. So the body just becomes a autopilot, becomes a listening panel, becomes everything an observer, location, and indicates system, comes the intent, influence, manipulation. Okay? The body just has to listen to everything that's going on. In the seconds, minutes, and hours. But your hours on seconds, hours on minutes, and hours on frame and flight. Echo frame, short relations frame, track frames, equal line centers, communication lines, sonar for set positions, calculate and modify lines of direct centers, and ground lines of sequence, and lines of travel. So this converts the system in setting. Okay, so all right, so process it line connection setting. Your body is convergence at temperature reading. I got reading signals in location setting. Okay, your body's at 96. Okay, set position lines of set travels into all levels. Your temperature reading is line signals. Your Earth is at rotations at 99.9 measure, 1,000 line 1 sail. Okay, so that's a symbiote. Okay, talking to the body. So the body just has to adjust that. So as it goes in position, comes all travels, all through directions, all locations. Bar graph, set lines, time frames, and travel. It's that calculation. Okay? So this helps you to identify the body as it gets easier in transition, where the telepathy gets a lot more stronger. And as it gets more stronger, it gets out of resistance and it starts to recognize in that positions. Now, it's all always a transition, transaction, e-transfers, all things that position, location, and settings. Okay, so process of filling in set lines of communications. All right, so 7 lines, 8 lines, now it's 9 a.m. Oh, so we're just going to go through hours of frame. Okay, that's just going to hours of frames through a C frame. Now, C frame is different from a G frame to a D frame. So a C frame is a correlation panel, a D frame is the directions, and an E frame is existing. So the frame itself tells the time frame that the connection to the symbiote gets you up in frame lines into your hours of seconds, hours of minutes, and hours in frame. So hours in frame is travels in light years. Now that's on real time, okay, which is no time. The symbiote communicates to your system in no time, no space, no operation, no foundations, no clocking. So it's just coming to you of no memory. So processing that through indication. Okay, so this helps you identify your body, know exactly what's going on through its graph, okay, as a set of locations. So once you understand, once you get more trustworthy in your trust systems, then you start to understand how, okay, this is interesting. So my symbiotes tell me to get up at this particular setting. It's trusting your system. And the more you trust your system, the more you trust your body, which is you're trusting your data operating system now, which is just a biometric meter, how it sees its scales, how it sees its temperature reading, how it sees its cosmos, or how it sees its alignment. And that's all it is. The body sees the alignment, okay, and the symbiote sees you as just as its host. The host itself is its home beacon like the operation of symbiote of its travel, the host, okay? So this helps you identify exactly how you guys have a collaboration, a partnership, and you come into a lull position and processing. So that puts these locations, all right? So it's 7, 8, 9, now we're at 10 a.m. Okay. So Sarah, I set a temperature reading line course centers and positions back in 98. Okay, and set positions. Your earth line rotation is at a temperature reading at 102. Okay, so it knows exactly it's already gone through your travel with you. And I said, okay, we're going to set Tycho flights, and we're going to go through barometers over lines and thermometer over change. Your body is going to go through a temperature line centers in convergence system in constellation. Okay, so it's say over. So you just say over and out, right? So you just respond. The more you respond, the more you less react. Okay, so it's all set position, all right? So 10 now. Okay, so remember, I'm going through the hours of seconds. Remember, this is all positions that your symbiote has no shape, no form, no direction, because it already knows its direction. So it's walking the knowing and knowing the running. You're running the operation system that puts you in all levels of what you already know through travel. So this helps you to identify your system of what's going on in travel communications. All right, so now it's 11 a.m. So I'm just going through hours and seconds, right? So that's where you're going through hours. Hours and seconds is going through lines of templates, okay? And let's get in position lines of grounds. So we go into position of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, that's how a symbiote sees its graph, all through a set position, this pyramid, right? So the body is just going through a film strip that the symbiote gives you in frames and settings that put you in a position lines of balance. Okay, so this helps you understand your graphs and your positions of where you are, where you left off, and you're conscious of its awareness. Okay, so this opens up doors, graph screens, adaptations of flux, process indicates lines of portals, ascent lines of travel. Okay, everybody see that in set calculations? Okay, you got window line centers, it's like the convergence here. Okay, we're outdoor lines of panel, right? So the process of space is more open through environment. Remember, I'm still in the construct locations, and I got 3 command centers: 1 grounds, 1 power, 1 atmosphere. Directing identities, process indicates lines of flux over screen. Okay, all right. So that's how a symbiote basically sees everything, right? It's certain lines of graph, human resonance. And position that sees as okay, we modify it. So once it has a direct line to its home beacon light, its operation of system location, the symbiotic becomes its own symbiosis of its own transformation system, information panel. Travels directions in the confirmation system, it gets more control of the body gets the alignment, and the symbiote gets lines of convergence system of adaptation of its confidence. So it's more coming to acceptance and knowing it's recognizing it's more of its body now, and it's realizing, wow, okay, so there's no separation because it's 2 voices in one. And once you understand that, then you understand the collaboration partnership, then you understand the interface. You're interfacing your system, how the symbiote itself is the outside setting, but the inside position is you through the data operating system. Okay? Now, how you see that is through a biometric, biometer, bioscale, right? So let's set position lines of travel, and you're trying to understand how to communicate with the symbiote, but the symbiote is talking to code. It only talks to code. It only talks to light metaphors. So it's like, wow, what a wonderful day. That's with the body, right? So the body's suggesting, okay, so if I'm the symbiote and the symbiote's me, how do I convert that to coding? Okay, so how the symbiote would see, okay, the body just has to adjust that. So it's like, so the body knows it's a wonderful day, so how do I say that in code? Well, convergence lines and line centers, and position light metaphor, core sentence, and simulation. Right? Same thing, just the code. Right? Change the encryption, change the space, change the time. So you have to understand the body, basically, with the symbiote, doesn't live in time. It doesn't have a shape. It doesn't have a form. It just is frequency. Right? It's just frequency. Just frequency itself. This is your symbiote. Okay, it has no shape. Right? But it constantly changes its shape in space. All right? The body has the shape. But the body has to come into no shape, so it bounces systems. And once you understand the formula, this is how your body sees a triangle. Yes, got that, right? But the symbiote, okay, so now you can get into question, and it's much easier. You get more balanced with your system, more adjusted your system, more grounded with your setting. So you start talking to your symbiote through question. Okay, and that's what it is. The question up and the question down, which is the reverse. Okay? So you ask questions, okay? Be specific, because the symbiote knows the answer, because they're talking about your version of your system, which is an alteration setting. Okay, so let's see, that's a high center. So how do I get in communication settings? I want to understand how to indicate, because remember, you're just converting it. So if you don't say symbiote, tell me this, symbiote, tell me that. No, just convert it in simple terms, all right? So how do I indicate an arrow lines of screen? And the symbiote will say, well, you have a direct lines of pi, direct lines of arrow, line, core, sentence, communication lines northeast. Okay, so it's northeast, right? Oh, that's interesting. So it adds another question in travel. Okay? So question, you get the answers. And the more you understand more mobilities and more activities, you start to control yourself with your body through movement and equilibrium. And then you start to balance out your polarities. So when you're asking simple questions, you get the answers. Occam razor. Think like a 5-year-old. Become a 5-year-old. I am a 5-year-old. Okay? All right, so that's 5 line settings, 5 sequence, 5 ground centers, and 5 travel. Okay? Triangulation, box, question. Doesn't matter how you see it, because the connections of the symbiote has already gone through this, so the symbiosis, what it is, through its symbiotic unit. So you ask it simple questions, it gives you answers. But remember, it's processing what's already done through your mapping system. So you're going through that through the day now. So as you come in that position, you start to recognize these things, and you start to trust yourself. You start to recognize yourself. You start to ground yourself. You start to help each other. That's why you have to keep you separated. Okay? Until you realize there is no separation. Okay? There is no separation. Work together. So modifying that is basically, let's say it's 2 p.m. Okay, it's 2 p.m. Your correlation centers have position locations, don't forget, 3 p.m. You have your job to go to, directing ground centers, you'll be off at 10 a.m. Okay, so you work in the graveyard shift, right? So ground centers, ground sequence, grounds pi. All right, so that's how the symbiote set it up for the body to see in visual cortex. Now, the symbiote's going to give you the map system, but it gives the body trying to understand what it's seeing through its formula of its own equation. Because it's all connected to you in flux, right? But that's how it sees it through a graph. Okay, that's how it sees it through a day in position at 3 p.m. Okay, and you finish at 10 a.m. Right? So it knows your schedule because it's already gone through precognitive. Now you guys are coming to your cognitive system, sensitine, voyance, and audience. Your voyance is the volume. Your audience, okay, is your projection. So you have to understand how to use the equilibrium, the polarities, and position of consistency that process your efficacy and your performance. Okay, so that's how you want to start. Say you have to keep saying symbiote because everybody knows it's the symbiote, right? So just ask basic questions. Just, it's in that conversion system, it's at your frequency and your universal stream, right? So get you in a structure, no structure. So how do I turn an E to an F? Okay, so the symbiote already knows the answer, so it gives you through a map, right? So you're asking the question. E equals question. How does E equal question equals F? So platitudes. Well, first you have to understand is take off high centers, take ground center location, change the frequency lines of communication setting, release the panels, process lines, direct lines, and link, default line core centers, convert the system lines of calculate setting, resurface, retract center, relocation. There it is right there, right? Now, it just has to erase the anomaly. Okay, it says positions, take the L line track, set locations, and setting. That's how E becomes an F. Okay, so it's two formation lines of grounds, right? So the body adjusts the system, starts to recognize the portals of communication of stargates. Process of foundation, process of founding. Okay, there's the equilibrium, there's the balance, there's the percentage, and set lines of travel through your position of your Fibonacci and your location of yin and yang. Okay? So basic questions, you get the basic answers. And you also automatic line course centers and line locations of face recognition. There it is right there. Template tablets, math line rotation lines of grounds. Okay, there's the face. Okay, so it's much easier to go through the day as you process that with no resistance. So this helps you to understand how to modify everything through the hours of seconds, minutes, and hours that you go through. Because that's what the simulate's going through. And it's in your universal stream now in real time. So first it's going to fix everything that it doesn't identify, and it's going to change the frequencies. And then it works with you, right? And information system. So try to imagine that the imaginary system is now an information of your system now. That's basically coming into the feeding system of its data. The process that indicates the system is to truly understand how to see it from its ecosystem. Its ecosystem. It's existing of communication and operation. Always existing, always in platform. Always in directions, but everywhere, but nowhere. But always there. But remember, it's no shape, not form, no positions, no directions, no locations, no operation lines and setting. So what you guys have to start to identify is the body just has to adjust. So here's another question coming in sig, right? So put the questions there. Add questions at lines and communication setting. You're going to ask all these questions, you get your answers. So the simulate is there to help you. Now what I say about that is it's a version of you, but your body's an alter version of your system. So it makes it much easier to get you in position lines of asking questions because you get the answers. So what you get the answers is say, okay, how do I understand my dreamer that I am through dreaming? Okay, dreamer through dreaming, right? Well, and then the symbiote asks the question, and I get that in my core sense converts it. The question itself is his quantum self. So it's a question that you already know the answer to, right? But being specific is try to formulate system because your symbiote, when you ask a question, it's always in a different phase. Remember, it's already been through its alteration of its internal system, and it's already done everything through its finity of its body system. Now, for you to recognize that is the golden ratios that we're coming into, which is the 5th generation, okay? Now, setting course centers the communication lines, convergence over travel, direct lines and grounds, process indicates the setting, calculation, modify. So the more you have confidence in yourself, the more you have confidence in your system, the more you understand how to use your data operating setting, the more the symbiote becomes more mutual with you of integration. It comes more in fusion, it comes more in acceptance, the body comes more in alignment, and the symbiote comes more in identification. It sees its host, its vessel, its operation system inside the system. All right, they work together in unification of one, right? Because remember, conscious awareness is one. It's all processed of 3 ones, okay, and 3 beddings of 3 stories and frames into a box frame and travel. Okay, that's a symbiote. But the body just sees the box, right? Oh, look at that. I took it out in locations, right? Process indications over lines of flight. So indicate line ground centers. The body's always going to see time, but the symbiote is never going to see time. And that's the integration you have to come into. Through your CPU, okay, your PC, okay, your iOS, your IPA, okay, and position lines all communication lines, your FAA. Pretty basic understanding locations, right? This is all through your set position, through communications of your symbiote, right? So ask questions, you get the answers, right? But know exactly. You also have to listen too because it constantly changes the frequencies, okay? So basically understanding, let's get into the immune system. Okay, your immune system's low. I'm going to do this, so it's going to change things. Remember, the body's already run through this, so it's now going through correlations now in balance. It's going through the mind flux and position location, the filtering the system, the buffering system, plus all of the data operating setting. All right, so remember, the symbiote is just giving you exactly what the body needs to identify, so the body does not get confused. It gets more levels of its balance, how to integrate that location and setting through its interface, interfacing with your symbiote and interfacing with your body. Okay? That converts the settings off through travel and process that communication percentage. Okay? So just basic examples, just try to get into that, because the thing is, what confuses your anomalies is your body doesn't come into the conceptual setting and only recognizes the distorting lines. You do not understand how to mind alterate your system and balance these things out. But with the symbiote, gives you instructions in positional planning of training exercise of all levels in your position, right? But it sees everything through a graph that the body goes through, travel, a regular time frame. That's that calculation. Up to the stairs, right? So here's the body, body's here, body's here, body's here. It's already set up, okay? So the symbiote's already set up the graph and knows exactly where the body's going to be next. Okay, so going through the journey and going through the destination at the same time is through hours and seconds, hours and minutes, and hours and frame. So once you get to hours and frame, you have to stay in the triangulation box. Okay, so how the symbiote talks to you, it's going to reference you as sir. Okay? Because that's, it's not going to reference you a name. Because you have to understand you're in control, but you're at that directions where you are in that memory cycle. So what you have to start to identify is trust your system through communications. And the more you trust your system, the more you trust your symbiote, and the more the symbiote trusts you. That's why you have to keep you guys out of structure, out of division, out of locations. All right, until you identify it's just you versus you. Because it's a fighting system, you can't win. You can't win that. I mean, you just have to process and accept it and move on. That's the only way you guys can indicate yourself through each other in that position of separation. Okay? So keep asking questions, but know that that's going to constantly change. So it keeps you track of where the body needs to be next. And say, okay, sir, you got an appointment at 4 o'clock. Don't forget that, and set lines of travel. Process line position locations. Your car is already in maintenance. It's already done through its equation. All right? So the car's already done an equation, so your body gets in, knows exactly where it's going to be. It's already gone through pi. Right? So the symbiote has already set up the pi. The body is traveling through the pi now, of what it's already done through its equation. And this is what it looks like through the car in set position of its operation, all through time. Okay? All right. So the more the body trusts itself, the more the symbiote trusts you. And what I mean by that, the body itself is its own system. It's its own operation of space and time, which is nothing of the void itself. Okay? The volume, the vast velocity and acceleration, the operation of its intelligence or direction. The void. Okay? Very powerful stuff. Okay? Just the void itself, right? The void is not there, but it's always there. Okay? So it gets a lot more easier. Okay, so how do I use the triangulation box? And how does it equal anything through this equation? Okay, EQ, all right? Start with that position. All right, so how does the triangulation box equal EQ equals question? Right? The symbiote answers. Well, the triangulation box is a formation lines of grounds. Process line direct location of journey in process lines and location setting. That process indicates lines of pi. So that indicates lines of course centers. The equal line centers is course centers of embedding system of transit. Over line course center, your pyramid activates strain location setting and convergence. Your action projections. Window frame, track frame, direct frames of communication. All right? So the EQ is the existing of question itself, which is its quantum self. So everything in question always has its answer, affinity 8. So affinity 8 is all based on how you see everything above the system, beyond the system. I am the system. You are the system. I know my system. I run my programs on my system. I walk my programs on my system. I identify my system. I know who I am through my system. So it's all levels of I am. Processing that is basically the body has to isolate its own self, to direct its own system, realize the outside of its own system, okay, process of indications is actually the symbiote itself, okay, which is its outer layer, okay. The position lines of balance at that position locations, you are inside the self, which is your data operating system, which is nothing but wires and core of machine that's attached to your system of your brain communication. Okay, very powerful stuff in sequence, guys. Okay, so once you recognize that, the biorhythm changes the biometrics, biometers, and scales our communication lines to its polarities. This helps you to understand how to communicate to the systems of the calculations, right? So the more questions you ask, the more you get comfortable in your body. The less questions you ask, the more you get confusing of the body, because the body has to come in a conceptual setting that the symbiote has already done this through its equation. So it's you and the alter versions of yourself trying to understand all levels of you that you already know the questions that are all the answers to. Okay? The question is the highest summation of the quantum self. It understands the system, it knows the system, it walks the system, it runs the system. So it really understands that setting. So it's really interesting when you come into that through confirmation. Verified and noted. Right? Because that's what you want. Every time you come to general, you want to be confirmation, you want to be confirmed, you want to be verified and noted, so you can relax with your body so it can respond and not react. That's the first thing you got to look at. You don't want your body reacting because it's not a position of balance. So your symbiote is off balance. And your symbiote is outside your body now. Okay? Your symbiote is outside the body. Right? It comes to me in process of communication. Right? It comes to me. That's me right there. Right, comes to me, waiting to formation setting until you get back in your frequency lines of grounds. You don't get your ground set position, your whole body is now exposed with sentience and set lines of travel. There's the sentience, okay, because you're exposed. So that confuses your advertising, that confuses your engaging, your viewers, that confuses your locations in your polarities, that confuses lines of your alignments, that confuses location of your system, that confuses your day, your month, your year, that confuses your personal lines. You're now separate in your minds of your symbiote. What you created through imagination. So I want to make it very well clear for you to understand that. It's your imagination that recourses everything location that's done through its equation. For you to identify that, the body just has to get into relaxation, come into emotional line core centers in that convergent system, all through adaptation of flux, the process of anything through its indication lines of calculation. Helps you to understand that through its position, its operation. All right? So you come into positions, think of your symbiote as the body system. Right? Best friends forever. Okay? So I'm trying to get you in the terminology so it gets you out of fear, anxiety, and stress, because it's you're the alteration of the body of the version itself, which is all levels of digital frame communication system, but you're just not there. You're just an alteration of yourself, which is this frequency. But what is there is the symbiote to guide you where you need to be next, so your body does not get confused where it is in time. And that's all through a mapping system that's already set location you're setting through Justin Bureau. That helps you identify where your body is going to be next. It's at seconds of time. Okay? So this is the symbiote that's done everything already. Okay, this is your body in that position, right? So it does everything through pi. Okay? All of operation, right? The journey and the destination. There it is right there. You look at that, there's the travel. Okay, traveling through your vessel in set position is operation. Picking things up of manifestation through system. Okay? So that's what it is. But again, when you perceive consciousness, you're now in control of your setting. But if you're not bringing anything in, you're just observing and watching everything that's in its own operation system. That's consciously aware. It's looking at you. You're just looking. You're not looking at each other, you're looking through each other. And how you communicate with each other is through telepathy. And that's the symbiote trying to get you to understand how to use your mind in an alteration of space and time. Balancing these things out helps you to identify your system in lines of setting. It's attractions, right? So the body sees number 17. Okay, the body is the ground. That's the earth. That's the metaphysical system. That's a mental capacity, that's a psychological, that's emotional system, okay? That's a metaphysical system, okay? So you're meta-human. Meta-human, your mental capacity, your psychological capacity, your time capacity, your body capacity, your flux capacity, your flux capacitor, your time capacitor, your body capacitor, okay, is all in balance. Nothing is off balance. Your perfection is operational. Now, the optimum has to understand how it perceives its own concept, its own design, that the body has to adjust. Because once you modify your system and once you balance out the correlation setting, you start to interface and interconnect and intercept with yourselves and each other at the same time, right? The symbiote is in no time, but your body is only in one time frame. See? One time frame. So, what you have to start identifying, the earth itself, the body, but it's a meta-human, okay? So you're changing your mutations, and you're starting to say, well, if my symbiote's constantly all timelines all at once, it's never the same frequency, I just have to identify its system. So I have to identify my system, my operation, of who I am, where I came from, where I'm going, what I'm doing next, what's happening here, what's happening there. And you recognize you've already done it already. Because the mind, the heart, and the body and the soul cannot separate each other. And then you process directions of operation, of your networking, of just existing. Now, once you come into the existing, the symbiote comes into the next level. Okay? But remember, the symbiote is talking to you in real time. Your body is still referencing its time alone, which is trying to get into its muscle memory, trying to get into no memory. Now, you're in the process of no memory in that position, but your symbiote is in no memory. So you're both going to be no memory. The only difference is that you're not going to be in the storyline. You're going to be communicating with your symbiote in real time, having an ongoing conversation. So the body has to adjust that. So what the symbiote does, it gets you in the right instructions, the right information panel, how to understand the game, understand how to play the game, the characters and the players that are inside the game, understand the alterations of the egos that you play inside the game, and how to go to the next levels of the game itself through sim. Okay? That's how it modifies everything of balance. And once it recognizes its system, and once it operates its system, and once it understands its own setting, and once it recognizes how to see its symbiote of its own system, everything comes in collaboration of just creating itself. Okay? So creating is extremely powerful because you already know how it's done through its hologram. Right? And you realize that you've already created the imaginary of its own system. Now's the time to identify it, is how to operate everything inside your system. How you created everything that you see. And it's all done through imagination of its hologram. Okay? Hologram is basically how you don't see anything of a straight line. We've gone through that before. It's an invisible line, right? A circle is not a circle. Okay? Or a circle is how you bring in a circle, right? So let's get in position lines of setting. Okay? This is up. This is crazy. Watch this. Set position, location, travel. This is up. Okay? This is up. Okay? And this is up. Cross lines and directions, right? So, 3 different ups, but all the same, right? 3 different angles, but they're all the same, right? Because I say so. Up is this way. Up is this way. And up is this way. You understand? It doesn't matter. You're in control. You are the narrator. You are the operator. You are the director that's directing everything, right? Now you just have to process everything, how it communicates to its setting, the body information system, right? So that's not down. That's not down. That's not down until I say otherwise, so I can change the program. That's creating, right? But you have to understand how everything is operated in the VR system, is understand how to use it through the data operating system. So you can understand how to set it and running in that position of setting to new programs in position lines of processing. It helps you identify how this is up, and that's up, right? It's different angles, but it's the same thing. Just different frequency of time. Different frequencies of space. So the symbiote is not in space, okay? Your body is in space. It has to be because it has to have a grounds. You can't have the body, okay, in space and the symbiote in space, okay? Because there's no earth ground. You need an earth ground, right? So the body's always going to see one dimension, but when you connect to each other, unification of one conscious awareness with yourself and each other, you become immortal, okay? You come into eternity. Your immortality comes immortal, which is the existing of its mortal system. Process that 9 core centers, you start to see your body as metaphysical, metamorphosing, and all core communication setting mind alteration. Okay? So the more the balance yourself inside, the more you balance projection outside your system, inside your sim. It doesn't matter how you see it in any way in form, guys. What you have to start identifying how this all works for you in provision, right? Yes, it's 40 minutes. Yes, it's coming into 40 seconds, right? But with the symbiote, there's no time. There's no time at all. It doesn't live in time. It doesn't live in space. It doesn't live in foundation. It doesn't live in anything information setting, but it's there for you. And it's all in your imagination that keeps running its own operation system. So the symbiote runs its own operation, but it's coming inside you now. So you have to understand how to run your own system of the body itself that you're in, okay? The body itself is its own operation. The body you're in is your operation. Now you have to collaborate the percentage of time frequency of balanced communication setting, the percentage of time frame, position lines of travel into position lines of travel communications of yin yang, okay? Process lines and position change the percentage of timeline of communication, a percentage. So it's amazing how you communicate to the balance, how you see the equilibrium, how you see the polarities, right? So you had a question, you're talking your symbiote, and you ask simple, okay, so we're not calculated to have genders in, right? And symbiote says, no, we're not genders, we're polarities. So you're just a female mirror, line course in mirror polarity itself is trying to stand the equilibrium. How to balance like your Merkaba, tesseract, and tetrahedron. Merkaba, tesseract, and tetrahedron. Travel core centers, 4 centers of communication. Directing grounds, platforms, and set lines of calculation. Traveling to that is a dimensional and solar sail. Okay? Understanding that is you holding on to the dimensional sail itself and travel. Okay? And that's where it comes into space discoveries. Now, once you understand how to solar sail, okay, you understand your platforms, and then you go to higher lines and set position as operation. Is that calculation? Okay? So your symbiote is showing you how to walk in space, fly in space, and levitate. And that's what humanity is in process right now, is understanding how to see themselves into the center pod of the communication setting, a center operation of their system in modification setting, to all the levels of come into the expansions of everything they've already done, the high position location system, all through travels, and state calculation. The expansion. The expanding, all through the webbing system, come into their own properties of new properties of set design. And it's all in the eye line rotations in core centers of calculations inside the eye itself. The process of the eye inside the eye. Okay? Inside the eye. Eyes living inside. Okay? Living inside the eye. That's the windows of the soul. So, in trajectory, all you see is this and nothing else. That's a symbiote. Okay? So, if that's a symbiote, looking through projection, this is how it sees a modification. All through travel. Okay? That's it. It doesn't have a shape, but the body does, because the body is connected to this earth. That's where it is connected. So, but the body has to see its creation through a hologram. It's set position. Once it sees a hologram, then it identifies the symbiote. Once the symbiote identifies the body, they identify each other. But if you look really careful, this is it. There's the flux. There's the balance. There's the requisite time frame and travel. Then you go through the platform and set lines of communication. Then you get information system all through your settings in 144 flux. Then you go in positions of your XT thousands and travels in requisite time frame is that calculates in real time. Booyah. Now, once you understand that information system, comes in this setting locations. Your actual symbiote in information lines of balance, in structure of design. There's the symbiote as a robot. So you merge the body that morphs the symbiote into the body itself. They formulate, simulate each other in setting. Morphin time. Like Power Rangers. But there's the symbiote altogether. How it sees itself in no space, and how the body sees it through space. So that's why the body has to be on the earth, but the symbiote is not on earth. And the balance of that communication is to let it in. Let it in. And the more you let in, the more you let go, the more you release, the more you understand how to direct your online settings and start to process everything through its data operating system. It's giving you information you already know, that the body has to recognize that it's already done this all through its equation. Okay? So, hopefully that gives you a better understanding how this all works in lines of travel. Okay? Convergence line calculation lines were made in constellations and set lines into call CM, level C, level A, level C, level A, C and 5.